Alright, so let's look at how do we develop a winning mindset. Now, mindset is one of these things that is always talked about and thrown about, oh, he has a good mindset, he has the right mindset for winning, they have the mindset for growth and opportunity. But what is this mindset? What is this mindset that allows some people to rise to the top of their fields? And what is the mindset that leaves people slumming at the bottom of the pyramid? Well, Carol Dweck has conducted extensive research into mindset, and she presents two different parallels. And what I'm going to do is to outline the difference between these parallels, and then we're going to look at how you can apply these to shift your psychology, to shift your development and learning, and to shift your relationships. So what are these two mindsets? So the first mindset, and the one that most of us have and most of us have been brought up with, is the fixed mindset. This is the belief that everything that we are born with is fixed. We have fixed traits, abilities, and skills, and there is no room for an improvement and development. And with the fixed mindset, we become incredibly scared of and self-conscious of failure, because failure demonstrates to us that that skill, that fixed attribute or trait isn't good enough. And thus, people with a fixed mindset will never push themselves and never challenge themselves because they're scared of having these fixed skills and fixed traits exposed, and they're scared of this failure. Because failure is really a stab at the ego for someone with a fixed mindset. It's saying, yeah, you know what? You're not good enough at that. You can't do that. You're a failure. So that's the fixed mindset. And this is something that cages us and holds us back in life. But there's another type of mindset, and that is the growth mindset. And this is the understanding that we can learn and develop as people. Any skill, attribute, ability that we have can be fostered and developed. And this isn't just a belief, this is science. You see, our brain isn't like a computer where the data is put in and it functions only using the data that it's got. Our mind is more like a muscle. The same way that a muscle can be trained, built upon, developed, our minds are exactly the same. So, any skill, ability, this isn't just talking about things like music or sport or art. If you want to be more caring, more considerate, more competitive, all those things can be trained as well. It's all about hacking into our neurocircuitry and strengthening those connections between different areas of our brain in which to develop that particular thing that we want. So that's the difference between the two mindsets. Let's look at how we can use this information to shift some key areas in our lives. So first of all, looking at our psychology and our thought patterns. This is something where the fixed mindset can develop into self-defeating talk of, I'm a failure, I can't do this, things are getting too hard for me. A study looked at students at university who were suffering from depression. Now, as someone who's suffered from depression myself, I can attest that during these times you get focused on those self-defeating thoughts, on the idea and concept that things are just how they are and they're going to continue to be how they are, and you're never going to be able to change these things. But what the study found is, looking at people with depression, or people who are suffering an episode of depression in a high stress period such as midterms or exams, they found that people who were in a depressive state but had a growth mindset actually worked harder than the students who didn't have depression. The people with the growth mindset recognized that because they were in a bad mood state, they were in a bad state of being and had a negative outlook on the way things were going, they knew that they had to work harder in order to keep up with their studies and with their exams. So what you can challenge yourself to do is, anytime you're in a negative state, it could be depression, it could be stress, it could be anxiety, what I want you to do is to challenge yourself. How can I think differently in this situation? How how can I work harder to push through this? Because that is one of the key components of the growth mindset. Is the growth mindset thrives on challenge. So anytime that you're in a challenging situation, this is actually where you're going to learn and develop. So ask yourself, how can I work harder and push forward to make this happen for me and to keep on moving towards where I want to be? So the next way that we can apply the growth mindset is to look at how we learn and develop. So again, looking at a psychological study, this time conducted in primary school children, they found that, what they did, was that they had two different studies, and they split the class in half, and half the class did a workshop on learning skills, and they did this for 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks of training on how you can learn better and how you can imprint information and memorize things more, all that kind of stuff. And then the other group were taught about the growth mindset. They were taught about how to think differently, how to realize that all of their skills and talents could be nurtured and they could be trained like a muscle, what we talked about in the beginning of this video. And what they found was after those 8 weeks, each half of the class had 8 weeks on those particular workshops. With the workshop that taught learning skills, those children showed no change in their grades. But you know the punchline, don't you? The children who'd been taught about mindset changes showed an improvement in their grades. And the difference was the children who'd been taught how to learn differently had shown no improvement, but the children who'd been taught how to think differently had shown improvement. So what we can translate this to in our lives is, if we want to learn and develop, there's only so much that we can look at. New strategies, new techniques, new habits. These things are good, and yes, they do help. But the real needle mover is going to come if we can train ourselves how to think differently. So what I want you to do is to ask yourself how you can look at things in the world differently. I want you to challenge yourself, challenge your preconceived beliefs and notions of the people around you, the environment around you. Start questioning, is that way that I've seen something or someone the right one? How can I investigate and inquire into that more? Start to look at how you can think differently about things, and that will help to rewire your brain. Okay, so now let's look at how the fixed mindset can affect our relationships. So, people with a fixed mindset often believe that they can't change the way that people think about them. So, if you've maybe got a barb or a bad word at work, if you've experienced some form of rejection, that is something that someone with a fixed mindset takes on, and they either believe that they're never going to change that person's opinion, and, or even worse, they believe that that trait, that person's judgment of them, is something that's true, and this is something that that person will take on, and it will maybe haunt them for the rest of their lives. We can be scarred by the things that people have said to us way, way back in the past, and that all comes from a fixed mindset of thinking that these things, just because someone has said it to us one time, just believing that that thing is true. So people with the growth mindset recognize that someone's judgment of them is their fixed mindset coming out. When someone judges you, they're prescribing a fixed attribute to you. So it's exactly the same as when we prescribe fixed attributes to ourselves. When we call ourselves smart or stupid, attractive, unattractive, caring, selfish, whatever it is, whatever fixed attribute we attribute to ourselves, that person's just done the same by judging us. And generally, a judgment is a negative one. So what I want you to do is, when you experience some judgment or rejection, just recognize that that person is operating from a fixed mindset, and have sympathy for them. Have sympathy for the fact that they can only see the world in that fixed black and white scenario, and they don't see the growth that is possible. And what I want you to do to help yourself rise above this, to help yourself rise above the fixed mindset, is to start to ask yourself how other people see the world. When someone says something, maybe when they make that judgment towards you, ask yourself, how is that person seeing the world? What must their perspective be in order for them to say that thing or to make that judgment? And stimulate your perspective, stimulate your growth, and rise above the fixation and rise above the trappings of judgment. And this is a very powerful way to do so, by enhancing your perspective and opening up your own mind and open up your own mind to possibly the judgments that you're making about other people. And if you catch yourself making a judgment, ask yourself that question. Why am I making that judgment? What evidence do I have for that? What are all the things that could be going on in that person's life? What are the things that they've maybe gone through that have put them into that position? And now I'm making a judgment on a very short snapshot of that person's life. So folks, that is how we can shift our mindset and change our approach and our dynamics in some really important areas of our lives. And so, just as a final call to action for you guys, I want you to start to really monitor your mindset. And not just in the areas that we've discussed in this video. Ask yourself, when you're applying fixed attributes, when you're saying things like, this is going to be the same for me forever, or I can't do this because I'm not X, Y, Z. Those are signs of the fixed mindset. And what we want to do is shift you into the growth mindset, where you start saying things like, I can do this if I learn this. What I need to do to accomplish that is to make these steps. That is the growth mindset, and that's the type of mindset that we all want to be striving towards. So folks, I hope you found that useful. I hope that stimulated the brain. And until next time, remember to love inwardly and shine